Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the live coverage of the government's March 1st Independence Movement Day ceremony. March 1st marks the anniversary of Korea's independence movement against Japan's colonial rule. On this date in 1919, arguably the world's largest nonviolent resistance campaign began. Participants wanted to do it in a peaceful way without hurting innocent victims, so to prevent the movement from turning into a riot, they even called the police themselves and informed authorities of their action. Shouts for justice, peace, and humanitarianism became chants for unity that brought the people together. It was a turning point in Korean history, triggering a nationwide civil protest. All Koreans joined to regain their lives from the exploitation of colonial rule. The March 1st independence movement made it possible for Korea to gain momentum to overcome colonization and initiated a national leap forward. The country takes time to pay profound respect to those who turned the history of Korea around while weathering adversities. This will be the last March 1st Movement Day speech by Moon Jae-in as president of South Korea. We're just days away from voting for the country's next leader on March 9th. As citizens prepare to celebrate the 103rd anniversary of the March 1st Movement Day, presidential candidates are campaigning with this theme in mind. Ruling Democratic Party presidential nominee Lee Jae-myung expressed regret over Japan's unwillingness to let go of its imperial past, saying it continues to hamper trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. The other leading candidate, the main opposition People Power Party nominee Yoon Suk-yeol, criticized the Moon administration's approach in bilateral ties, highlighting that historic issues cannot be sorted out without close relationship between the two sides. Let's go straight to the scene where the speech is being ready to be delivered.
This is where the National Memorial of the Korean Provisional Government, the wave of history at the front of this venue is expressed in waves the dedication of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea. In between the waves are engraved the full text of Declaration of Korean Independence, the Korean Provisional Charter of the Constitution, and the Constitution of the Republic of Korea to embody the history of Korea to the present. In remembrance of our patriotic martyrs, devotion to independence and our proud history, we will now begin the 103rd March 1st Independence Movement Day ceremony, Great Koreans to the Great Korea. First, Pledge of Allegiance. Today, the pledge will be recited by Korean national figure skater Cha Jun-hwan, who took the world by surprise by ranking 5th in men's singles figure skating in the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and face the taegukgi on your left. Salute to the flag. I pledge in front of proud taegukgi flag allegiance to the Republic of Korea for the eternal glory of the country, liberty and freedom to the Republic of Korea. At ease. We will sing the national anthem in unison until the fourth verse. Let us pay silent tribute to the national martyrs and the fallen heroes. Silent tribute. At ease. We would like to share a very special moment. Every year, we come across the sad news of passing away of our patriots who dedicated their lives to national independence. Ever since the Moon Jae-in administration took office in 2017, we have lost 51 patriots until today. And so let us take a moment to honor the memory of the 51 patriots who will be sure watching us today from up above. Please join us with reverence. Please take your seats. We will never forget the patriots' sacrifice and dedication. We also like to thank Ms. Kwak Da-kyung for playing the tribute song, Farewell. We will now recite the proclamation of Korean independence in memory of the sacrifice and devotion of foreign independence activists who share their will for Korea's independence from all over the world. We would like to recite the March 1st proclamation of Korean independence in the languages of the world, in remembrance of their noble sacrifice. Mr. Lee Jong-chan is the great-grandson of the late Lee Gang, the independence activist who sacrificed his life for anti-Japanese movement in pursuit of the independence of his motherland. And Ms. Park Hae-rim, the choreographer who will lead the future Korean culture, will read together. English version will be read by Mr. John Linton, a descendant of William Linton, who conducted various patriotic activities during the March 1st movement and who is contributing to the development of our society at the moment. Japanese version will be read by Mr. Okusa Minoru, who is leading the education team at K2 International, a youth support social enterprise that supports the socially withdrawn young people in Korea and Japan and also teaches Japanese. Chinese version will be read by Ms. Chi Hwan-nim, the president of Korea-China Culture Friendship Association. Russian will be read by Ms. Ko Mi-ho, who who visited Seodaemun prison to introduce the agony of the Japanese occupation on the occasion of the 73rd National Liberation Day. The sign language will be read by Ms. Lee So-byul, who was the host of the 75th National Liberation Day ceremony on behalf of the deaf. And this year, a reading in French was added to commemorate the French concession in Shanghai, where the first office of the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea was located. French version will be read by Fabien, who has obtained a Korean history commentator license. The recitation of the Proclamation of Korean Independence will be accompanied by a performance by world-renowned cellist Hong Jin-ho.
네.
We hereby declare that Korea is an independent state and that Koreans are a self-governing people. We proclaim this fact to all nations to reaffirm the great truth that all humans are equal, so that our descendants may forever enjoy their rights to live as an autonomous people. This declaration of ours is propelled by the strength of our 5,000 years of history and the shared will of 20 million Koreans. It is made so that our nation may thrive in perpetuity and be in step with the larger trend of global evolution that is being shaped by the conscience of humanity. This is the will of heaven and the spirit of our time, and it springs from the rights of all humans that humans deserve. Nothing in the world shall stand in the way of our independence.
Our people have been suffering through a decade of unprecedented suppression, falling victim to Japanese aggression and authoritarianism. We have been deprived of the right of self-determination and the chance to foster our nation's spirit. Lost are the golden opportunities for our people to contribute knowledge and creativity to better humankind. The wound to our nation's dignity cuts deep into our core. The most pressing need is to firmly secure the independence of our nation. Only then will we recover from accumulated resentment and pain. Only then will we forestall the impending threats and restore conscience and justice to this nation. Then and only then will each of us develop into unencumbered individuals and reserve for our children the gift of whole some happiness instead of the legacy of shame.
Maintenant que nous,
Today,
les 20 millions de
our
Coréens,
20 million people
gardons une
have
épée dans le
steeled
cœur,
themselves in their resolve.
et que la valeur commune
The
de
conscience of
l'humanité
mankind
et la
and
conscience
of
de
our
l'effort que nous
time
défendons,
fortifies us with the
équipés des
army
armes
of
de
justice
la
and the
justice
armaments
et
of
de la moralité.
humanity.
Qu'est-ce qui peut nous
Therefore,
empêcher d'aller de
we can
l'avant
defeat the
pour vaincre le
mightiest
plus fort?
foe if we take a
quel but
stand and fight,
pouvons-nous pas
and we can
atteindre?
bring anything into being if we take the time to effect our will. We do not accuse Japan of betrayal for not keeping its promises in the aftermath of the Treaty of 1876. We shall not condemn the Japanese for the lack of respect because its scholars and politicians belittled our heritage as that of a colony, dismissed our culture as barbaric, and disrespected our long-established society and our good nature. We are too focused on upbraiding ourselves to the point to pointing fingers at others, and we are too occupied with righting wrongs of the present and not the past. The task at hand is to build ourselves up, not to tear the others down. We're compelled by our conscience to create our destiny anew, not by envy to drive out others to indulge a long-standing resentment or a moment's whim. We simply wish to set right this unjustified reality in which we were sacrificed for the ambition of Japanese politicians, for their outdated ideas and outdated forces, and to restore it to a natural and rational state. Consider the consequences of our state's coerced annexation with Japan, which our people never decide. Japan is fomenting irreconcilable resentment between the two nations with disparate interests through oppression, discrimination, injustice, and false statistics. Is it not evident that the shortest way to mutual happiness and lack of tragedy is to boldly right the past wrongs and build up earnest understanding to create a new world of goodwill?
民族の望むところではなかった朝鮮と日本の強制併合がもたらした結果を見よ日本による抑圧と民族差別の不平等とでっち上げられた統計データによって利害が対立する両民族間に和解できない怨恨が醸造されつつある今ここで思い切ってこれまでの過ちを
Shortest way
正
to
し
mutual happiness
真の理解と共感を
and
持
lack
ち
of tragedy is to boldly right the past wrongs and build up
新しい世
earnest
の中を作ってい
understanding
くことが
to create a new
互いに災いを避け
of
幸せになる近道ではないだろうか
Peace in the East cannot be brought about by coercively suppressing the deep-rooted frustration and resentment of 20 million Koreans. It will only breed even greater fear and hatred of 400 million Chinese toward Japan. If this were the case, this will eventually lead to a tragic end of the Eastern world as the Chinese stand at the center of the regional security. The independence of the Korean nation will make it possible for its people to flourish as they should and allow Japan to renounce its wrong-headed path and take responsibility for its role in the East. It will free China from anxiety and fear that it may lose its land to Japan and secure a footing for peace in the region, which plays an essential role in world peace and the happiness of all humankind. How can the independence of our nation be dismissed as an emotional and trifling matter? A new world is opening up before our eyes. The age of oppression by force is giving way to an era where principles reign. Our humane spirit, honed over thousands of years, now signals the dawn of a new civilization in the history of humankind. A new spring is enveloping our whole world. breathing new life into everything under the sun. The times of stifled breath is freezing blizzards. In freezing blizzards are giving way to an age of balmy breezes, glowing light, and new life. Now, as the way of the world is returning to life, we are at one with the spirit of the age and have no reason to balk or waver. We will defend our innate right to liberty and bask in the joy of the bounty of life. We will give free rein to our naturally abundant creativity, to let our great, brilliant culture blossom in the new spring that is warming the world. That is why we are taking a stand. Our conscience and truth are with us. Men, women, young and old will all burst out from their dark to enjoy a new happy life along with all creation. The souls of our forebears from thousands of years ago live in us and give us strength, while the momentum of the world protects us from without. Our beginning is our success. We are simply marching toward that bright light that beckons ahead of us. Thank you very much, all the reciters and cellist Hong Jin-ho. Please give them another round of applause. Following the solo performance of the Korean March, was played the representative anti-Japanese music, the Song of Great Korean Spirit, the Yalu River March, and Danny Boy's Arirang. It was all the more meaningful to read the proclamation of Korean independence in the languages of the world here at the National Memorial of the Korean Provisional Government that cherishes the 27 years of provisional government's activities and footsteps, as well as our people's yearning for independence. Remembering the spirit of our ancestors, and as a proud citizen of the Republic of Korea, we once again reiterate our resolve to work toward the peace and happiness of mankind around the world. Next, the President will bestow a government award in commemoration of the 103rd anniversary of March 1st Independence Movement. At this year's ceremony, a total of 5 people will be given the award: 4 independence patriots and 1 person of merit for the establishment of this memorial. First, the late Lee Soo-jun. The late Lee Soo-jun, as the above person has contributed greatly to the independence and the establishment of the Republic of Korea, I am conferring the following posthumous award according to the Constitution of the Republic of Korea: the Medal of Merit for National Foundation, the President, awarded to his grandson, Lee Gon-yong.
대통령께서 훈장 소수 정장을
The
추서판에
President
걸어주고
is hanging the medal on the posthumous honors plate.
네, 다시 한번 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give him a big round of applause.
다음은 고
Next,
심종윤
the late
군입니다.
Shim Jong-un.
건국 훈장 애족장 고
The Medal of Merit
심종윤.
for National
이하
Foundation.
내용
The late
손녀
Shim Jong-un, the
심우숙님께
contents are the
수여되겠습니다.
same, awarded to his granddaughter Shim Woo-suk.
대통령께서 훈장 소수 정장을 추서판에 걸어주고
The
계십니다.
President is hanging the posthumous honors medal on the plate.
다음은 고
The late
오택열님입니다.
Oh Taek-yeol.
건국 포장
The National
고
Foundation
오택열.
Medal, the
이하
late
내용
Oh
말씀.
Taek-yeol, the contents are the same,
오진담님께
awarded to
수여되겠습니다.
his daughter Oh Jin-dam.
대통령께서 포장을
The
추서판에
President
걸어주고
is
계십니다.
hanging the medal on the plate.
네, 축하드립니다. 다음은 고
Next is the late Lee
이훈구님입니다.
Hoon-gu.
대통령 표창
Presidential
고
citation, the late
이하
Lee
내용
Hoon-gu, the
말씀.
contents are the same.
생손자
It is awarded
이동영님께
to his
수여되겠습니다.
great-grandson, Lee Dong-young.
대통령께서 수장을 추서판에 걸어주고 계십니다.
The medal is on the plate.
이어서 대한민국 임시정부 기념관
We will now
건립
award the
공장
person of
포상을
merit for the
하시겠습니다.
establishment of the
대한민국
National
임시정부
Memorial of
기념사업회
the Korean Provisional
김자동
Government.
의원입니다.
President of the Korea Provisionary Government Commemoration Service Association, Kim Ja-dong.
사단법인
Order
대한민국
of Civil
임시정부
Merit
기념사업회 회장 김자동.
to
귀하는
Kim
대한민국
Ja-dong,
임시정부 기념관
as the above
건립을
person
통해
has contributed
국가 사회 발전에
greatly
이바지한
to
공로가
the
크므로
establishment
대한민국
of
헌법에
the
따라
National
다음
Memorial
훈장을
of the Korean
수여합니다.
Provisional Government.
국민 훈장 모란장 2022년
Order of
3월
Civil
1일
Merit,
대통령
Peony Medal,
배우자 김숙정님께
awarded to his
수여되겠습니다.
spouse, Kim Suk-jung.
네, 다시 한번 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give them a big round of applause.
이상으로 독립유공
This
및
concludes the
대한민국
awarding
임시정부
ceremony to
기념관
those of
건립
merit
공장
for
정보
independence and the
상시를
establishment of the National Memorial.
다음은
The President will deliver his commemoration speech on the 103rd March 1st Independence Movement Day.
존경하는
Honorable
국민 여러분,
Koreans,
해외 동포 여러분,
compatriots overseas,
마침내
I am
국민
deeply
곁에
moved to hold this
우뚝 서게 된
ceremony to commemorate the 103rd anniversary of March 1st Independence Movement Day with the opening of the National Memorial of the Korean Provisional Government, which has finally stood tall.
지난 100년
In the past 100 years,
우리는
we have
3.1
achieved the
독립운동과
democratic republic
임시정부가
that the March
꿈꿨던
1st Independence Movement and the Provisional Government
일궈냈습니다.
dreamed of.
모두가 자유롭고
We have worked
평등하며
restlessly to
억압받지
create a
않는
country where everyone is free,
평화롭고
equal,
문화적인
and free
나라를
from
만들기
oppression,
위해
a country
쉼없이
of peace and
달려왔습니다.
culture.
3.1
The March
독립운동과
1st Independence
대한민국
Movement
임시정부는
and the Provisional
선조들이
Government of the Republic of
우리에게
Korea
물려준
are
위대한
great legacy
유산입니다.
handed down to us by our
민주공화국의
ancestors.
역사를 기억하고
Remembering and
지키는
honoring
일은
the history
오늘의
of the Democratic
민주공화국을
Republic
더
is what makes
튼튼하게
today's Democratic
만드는
Republic
일입니다.
even more stronger.
저는 취임 첫해
In my
광복절
first year
기념사에서
in office,
대한민국
I promised to build a
임시정부
memorial of the
기념관
Provisional
건립을
Government
약속한 데 이어
in my National Liberation Day commemoration speech. When I visited China that same year, I was the first president of Korea to visit the provisional government complex of the Republic of Korea in Chungking and pledged to my ancestors to build a memorial hall. Those promises have finally come true. It is very meaningful to be able to celebrate the spirit of March 1st independence movement, the history of the provisional government, and the pride of independent and democratic republic together with the people. I am deeply grateful to the Provisional Government Commemoration Association and its chairman, Mr. Kim Ja-dong, who have worked hard for the construction of this memorial hall for a long time, and also the Memorial Building Committee and Chairman Lee Jong-chan, the Restoration Society, and the Independence Patriots and the descendants of the independence fighters who donated valuable materials. The Korean Provisional Government Memorial Hall faces Seodaemun Independence Park. Today, the spirits of independence activists and forefathers who did not give in to hardships seem to welcome the Provisional Government Memorial Hall, the March 1st Declaration of Independence Monument, and the monument to the patriots of the martyrs. The Provisional Government Memorial Hall contains the chants of the March 1st independence movement. It contains the patriotism of the patriots who devoted their whole lives to the independence of the country while enduring hardships. We will never forget the roots of the Republic of Korea as a democratic republic. Fellow Koreans, our history is the history of a truly democratic republic where the ordinary has made great progress. On March 1st, 1919, unnamed people gathered and held 태극기. In the streets of full sounds of manse, they met people like themselves who dreamed of a free world. It showed and displayed the peaceful resistance of nonviolence can usher in a new era. The cry of independence resounded across the Yalu River and across the Pacific Ocean around the world. In North Kando, West Kando, and Maritime Province, in Hawaii, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, 태극기 was waving with the sound of manse. Our ancestors raised themselves from people under colonial rule to citizens of a democratic republic. On April 10th of that year, national independence activists from Seoul and Manchuria, Maritime Province, and the Americas and Japan gathered in Shanghai, China. The Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea was established, and the Provisional Parliament was formed, and the people declared that they had become the owners of the Democratic Republic. This was the moment when the Republic of Korea was born as a democratic republic. Our movement is not just seeking sovereignty. It is to establish an exemplary republic on the Korean peninsula so that 20 million people can enjoy the natural blessings and enjoyment. This is what Mr. An Chang-ho said when he took office as Minister of Interior of the Provisional Government. In 1941, the State Affairs Commission of the Provisional Government announced a program for founding of the Republic of Korea and presented a plan for a new country after liberation. Once again declaring the goal to be a democratic republic that enjoys equal lives in politics, economy, education, and culture. Over the past 100 years, we have achieved that goal one by one. Korea, the poor country that suffered from colonization and war, in a small workshop in Cheonggyecheon, at coal mines and hospitals in Germany, in the scorching sun under the desert, and in industrial sites all over the world, we have become a developed country through the sweat of each and every citizen. Many national crises, including foreign exchange crisis, were able to surmount through the strength of the people who were more united in the midst of crises. It was also the power of ordinary people that defended democracy in Busan and Masan, in Gwangju in May, and the Square of June, and the Candlelight Revolution. Our government was also born with the power of people. We took it as our duty to find the names of those unnamed sacrifices and to return their honors to those who are not appreciated. Over the past 5 years, 2,243 people of merit were found and rewarded. Among them are 245 women independence activists who have not been properly recognized. There are many independence fighters who have not yet been able to find their descendants and have not been awarded their medals. The government will try to find all of the independent patriots and their descendants until the last minute. We also made efforts to repatriate the remains of independence fighters who were buried overseas. In 2019, patriots Tae Bong-woo and Hwang Eun-jung were repatriated in Kazakhstan, Central Asia, and the remains of General Hong Bom-do were brought to homeland on National Liberation Day in 2021. The government is providing living subsidies to children and grandchildren of independence fighters who are having difficulties in living and puts their plaque on their homes. Until the end of last year, the plaques were placed on 460,000 families of independence fighters and people of national merits. The fact that your ordinary neighbor is a hero of independence will instill pride in your community as well. The government has not stopped taking on challenges for the future while overcoming the crisis over the past 5 years. We have paved the way for self-reliance in the field of materials, parts, and equipment in the face of Japanese export restrictions. Together with people, we created a driving force that leads innovation and growth, overcoming crises. Our people's mature civic consciousness, that was the most significant contribution to navigating through the COVID-19 pandemic tunnel. Based on the achievements of the disease control efforts, the Korean economy achieved a 4% growth rate last year, ushering in the era of per capita income of $35,000. The three major distribution indicators, such as Gini coefficient, quintile multiplier, and relative poverty rate, all continue to improve, breaking the formula that crisis increases inequality. The medical staff and disease control staff, who have dedicated themselves even in difficult circumstances, the essential workers who silently safeguarded the daily lives, the small business owners and self-employed who had the greatest difficulties, and the people who endure the inconveniences of everyday life are all leading our efforts in overcoming the crisis. Thank you very much. We are the people who deserve to be happy. Until the last day of my tenure, I will do my utmost so that efforts of all our people are not in vain. Fellow Koreans, we are now a prosperous country that no one can underestimate. We have become a developed country recognized by the world. The most overwhelming fact of all is that Korea has become a Korea with high level of culture. In the March 1st Declaration of Independence, the ancestors stated that the purpose of the independence movement was to establish a brilliant national culture by demonstrating rich creativity and to have an opportunity to contribute to world culture. Mr. Kim Gu, the president of the provisional government, also said, "The only thing I want indefinitely is the power of culture. This is because the power of culture brings us happiness, and furthermore, it gives happiness to others." It felt like a distant dream then, but today, we are living this dream. Our culture and art have transformed the traditional and modern culture together in a vessel named Korea. We're moving the world by realizing the dreams of our ancestors that they longed for a century ago. Hallyu, represented by K-pop, is taking over the world. Regarding the BTS Gale, Forbes called it a new standard. The film Parasite swept the Cannes and the Academy Awards. games, webtoons, and animations are well received around the world, and our dramas, such as The Squid Game, are becoming a global hit. Even in fields as Western classical music and ballet, the talents of Korean people are praised around the world. It is the result of the passionate endeavors the artists put in each field. The driving force that has developed our culture and art as such is undoubtedly democracy. Democracy without discrimination and oppression gave wings to the creativity and free imagination of culture and art. The Kim Dae-jung administration, the first democratic government, opened up Korea to Japanese culture with confidence. Our culture and arts have grown amidst diversity, and in turn, we have become competitive enough to overwhelm Japanese culture. The British monthly magazine, Monaco, ranked our soft power second in the world after Germany. We were able to confirm the fact that charm of our Korean culture and arts greatly elevates the international status every time I made tours overseas. Support but do not interfere is a firm principle established by the past democratic governments. Freedom of creation and expression is broadened and strengthened in democracy. Our democracy, moving ahead and not stopping, our culture will start and constantly be in the world, impressing the world. I express my utmost respect to the cultural artists who give their great endeavors and give us great pride. Fellow Koreans, in the midst of COVID-19 crisis, the international order is shaking. Technology competition is fierce as digital and green innovations accelerate. Nationalism, which seeks to seize hegemony by force, is also raising its head. Concerns about the new Cold War are growing. But for us, the spirit of March 1st independence movement, resisting violence, discrimination, and injustice, is flowing. Korea has become a proud country with the world's 10th largest economy, 7th global export powerhouse, 6th military power, and world first Innovation Index. The lesson that the spirit of the March 1st independence movement teaches us today is that we must have the power to lead our history without being swayed by the international order of the great powers. We're now taking a new leap forward by turning crisis into opportunity. The Korean version of the New Deal, which started in the midst of COVID-19, has become a future strategy for Korea. Digital and Green New Deals are creating new industries and creating better jobs. With the Human New Deal, we expanded the employment safety net and social safety net, ushered in an era of balanced national development with a regionally balanced New Deal, and started a clear transition to an innovative and inclusive society. In an era when the economy is invisible, we are also going through the difficulties of global supply. Our semiconductor and battery industries, with the world's most competitive advantage, are leading the global supply chain. Now, we have the capacity to lead the cooperation based on multilateralism. In the G7 summit, we were invited for the 2 consecutive years, and it tells us the increased status of Korea. The new Southern policy centered on ASEAN and the new Northern policy with Eurasian countries, the diplomacy that expanded to Latin America and the Middle East. It had broadened, all of these broadened the horizons of economic cooperation. And RCEP, the world's largest FTA, went into effect last month. And we have an FTA network equivalent to 85% of the world's GDP. It displays the economic sphere that we had expanded. As for us to become stronger is
3일
the peace on the Korean peninsula that we need. There was no South or North Korea in the March 1st independence movement. Various powers joined in the provisional government and formed a coalition government that united the left and right. The main stem of anti-Japanese independence movement was the national unity. The Liberation Army, which was finally united under the provisional government, left a shining mark in the history of anti-Japanese independence movement. In November 1945, the officers who returned to their homeland made their last effort to prevent division. That unfinished effort is now ours to accomplish. One day, like the aspirations of the March 1st independence movement, the cry for unification will be revived among the sons and daughters of the nameless protagonists of that day. First of all, we must achieve peace. The Korean War and the history of division we have experienced since then taught us that only dialogue, not confrontation or hostility, can bring peace. Our government was able to achieve peace through dramatic dialogue amid the North Korean nuclear crisis at the time of its inception. But our peace is fragile because the conversation was cut off. Efforts for dialogue to sustain peace must continue. The Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games was transformed into a peace Olympics, and we dreamt of it, and it was achieved, and it was only through our efforts for diplomacy, and we can do this for denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. We will never repeat the pain of a century ago. Through peace, we will protect the survival of the nation, raise the nation's self-esteem, and prosper in peace. Cooperation between Korea and Japan is the responsibility of the present generation. Our ancestors proposed to Japan to overcome old grudges and temporary feelings in the declaration of the March 1st independence movement and to work together for peace in the East. And I believe we have the same hearts right now. In this time of many difficulties, our close neighbors, Korea and Japan, the close neighbors, should be able to overcome the history and work together towards the future. Beyond the Korea-Japan relations, I sincerely hope that Japan will take leadership as an advanced country. To do this, Japan must face history and be humble before it. Japan will become a trusted country when it can empathize with the wounds of the people of neighboring countries. Our government will also keep the door open for dialogue in order to join forces in responding to global challenges ranging from regional peace and prosperity to the COVID-19 and climate crises and supply chain crises to the new economic order. Honorable Koreans, compatriots overseas, we have called those who were active in the provisional government of Republic of Korea as provisional figures. The word provisional figures contains the respect of our descendants. Until now, all of our people have played an active role in economic development and democracy and have become valuable people in their respective positions. Now, we have set off towards a new Republic of Korea, a leading country around the world. On this path, each citizen is like the provisional figures. Everyone is a pioneer, and everyone has an important mandate. Now, no one can shake the Republic of Korea. No one can take away the sovereignty of our people, and no one can neglect any other's life. The Memorial Hall of the Provisional Government here will remember the great Republic of Korea achieved by all the people and will always be a milestone of courage and hope for the people.
독립의 열기로
In the spring of
뜨겁게
1919, when the flames of
1919의
independence burned warm,
고난과
I
영광의
pay
길을
my
당당히
deepest
걸어가
respects to the forefathers who proudly walked the path of hardship and glory and finally became a great history for all of us.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
우리는 다시는 그런 역사를
We will never repeat that history.
선조들의 고난을
And we
되돌아보며
look back on the hardships of our ancestors, and we should become
누구도 넘보지 못하는
the
큰 나라.
abundant country, the country that can never be underestimated, and the country that is respected in the international society.
우리의 독립운동사를 제대로
And
밝히고
we should look
독립유공자들과
into
후손들을
our history
제대로
of
예우하는
independence
것이
and
그
to pay
시작일 것입니다.
respect to our patriots.
물과 백두산이 마르고 닳도록
We seek for our patriots.
홍범도 장군님의 귀환을 모시게 되어 영광입니다.
And we brought back their remains from
안전하게 호위하겠습니다.
overseas back to their motherland.
아직도
And
제대로
we
평가받지 못한
awarded the Medal
독립운동가들이
of
많으며
Merit to the people who were not
가려진
recognized,
독립운동의
more than
역사가
2,000.
많습니다.
And we established this memorial hall of Korean Provisional Government, never to forget their will and their endeavors. And I tell my daughters that we are the descendants of these patriotic martyrs. And we chanted with them in Yongsan, in Seodaemun Prison, at Seoul Station, at Tapgol Park, that we together and today we will shout and cry out, hooray for the independence of Republic of
아무도
Korea,
흔들 수 없는 나라.
a country that is unshakable, has not been accomplished.
강하지 않기
It
때문에
is because we are still not strong enough
분단되어 있기 때문에
and we are still divided.
저는 오늘
And
어떤
today,
위기에도
I would
원활하게
like
대처해
to
국민들을 떠올리며
Thank
우리가
all
만들고
the
싶은
people
나라,
who were
아무도
unshaken
흔들 수 없는
by
나라를
all the
다시
hardships
마지막.
and would like to make the country that is unshakable.
우리는 아무도 흔들 수
We
없는 나라를
will
만들 수 있습니다.
make the country that is unshakable.
네. 아무도 흔들 수 없는 나라.
A country that is
우리의 선열들은
unshakable.
일제 강점기의 역경과
Our
고난을
patriotic
3.1
forefathers
운동과
surmounted the
대한민국
hardships
수립이라는
and sufferings of the
도전과
Japanese colonial
함께
rule
이겨냈습니다.
with the exertion and courage that was needed for the March 1st movement and the establishment of the provisional government.
더큰 대한민국으로 도약하자는 결의를 다짐해 봅니다.
Let us pledge to take a leap forward into a great and greater Republic of Korea. Next is commemorative performance. I believe this symbolic song has now become indispensable at the March 1st commemoration. This is a rearrangement of the song Taehan Lived in a modern style. It was sung in prison by 7 women independence activists who were imprisoned together in women's prison room number 8 of Seodaemun Prison immediately after the March 1st movement. This year, it will be sung by singer Shin Yumi, Mad Clown, and the Heritage Choir.
서대문 형무소 역사 8호실 차가운 바닥 위 내 아들의 아들에게 내 딸의 딸들에게 나 있는 곳 비록 어둡고 모친 매질 이 뼈를 조각내도 날 불쌍히 여기지 말라 날 위해 울지도 말라 내 갈라진 목소리가 창살을 넘어갈 때 희망은 가둬질 수 없으니 서대문 형무소 역사 8호실 차가운 바닥 위 대안이 살았다 거기 대안이 살았다
전중일고
지키를 넘고 당당히 불러지기를 목마름으로 반인 충만함으로 간절한 영원히 감사함으로 그리고 그 좋은 날내 새끼 꽃가시 신경 내 사랑 손잡고 서거를 걷고 싶소 그날을 나는 꼭 보고 싶소 나 지금 있는 곳 비로가 둡고 자유롭지 못해도 서대문 형무소 역사 8호실 거기에
대한이 살았다 대한이 살았다 대한이 살았다 대한이 살았다 선전이 동하고 바다가 대한이 살았다 대한이 살았다
네, 서대문 형무소 안에서
There,
7명의
one
여성
single wish, the
독립운동가들이 대한이 살았다 이 노래를
prisoners
부르면서 독립을 염원했다고
were
합니다.
singing this
그
song.
모습을 상상만 해도 정말
Just by
가슴이
imagining
뭉클하고 눈물이 나는데요.
the scene
이 노래 듣고
brings
또
tears to my
들어도 정말
eyes,
감동적인
and it's
공연이었습니다.
really
가수
overwhelming
신유미
to
씨와 매드클라운
listen
씨
to this
헤리티지
song.
합창단에게
Please
다시
give
한번 큰
Shin-Yumi,
박수
Mad Clown, and the
부탁드립니다.
Heritage Choir another round of applause.
다음 순서는 3.1절
Now let
노래
us sing together the
대창입니다.
song of March
어떠한
1st
시련과
movement.
고난 속에서도
It was the
우리를
spirit
일으켜
of the
세우고
March
강하게
1st movement that
만든
lifted us up
3.1 운동
and made us strong
정신이었습니다.
despite all
3.1 운동의
agonies and
정신을
hardships.
되새기며 모두 자리에서 일어나서
Ruminating the
오른손으로
spirit of March
태극기를
1st movement,
힘차게
I'd like to ask
흔들면서
everyone to
다
stand
함께
from their seats
불러주시기
and wave the
바랍니다.
taegukgi in their right hands.
네, 이어서 만세
We will
3창을
chant Manse
진행하겠습니다.
3 times.
올해 만세
This year
3창에는
we have
특별한
3
세
special
분께서
guests
함께
who will chant
해주셨는데요.
Manse.
고 개봉후
As the
애국지사님의
third son of the
셋째
late
아들로
patriot,
개봉후
Kebong-woo,
전
the
세계
late
자료와
Kehangnim,
원고를
dedicated his life to
홍범도
publicizing his
장군의
father's work
요역을
and
관리하는
manuscripts.
일로
He
평생을
served
바치신
as a
고
manager
계항림
of
선생님.
General Hongbomdo's
2020년
grave all his
홍범도
life.
장군 봉환행사를
Today we
준비하여
are able to see his video message on behalf of the Koreans in Kazakhstan, filmed back in 2020 in preparation for the return of the remains of General Hongbomdo. And the late patriot Chung Wan-jin, who joined the Taegukdan, a secret Society of Anti-Japanese Student Movement for the Independence of the country. The late patriot Lee Mu-chol, who, while attending Gongoksa High School in Tokyo, criticized the Korea and Japanese are one policy and argued the injustice of bowing toward the Japanese royal palace policy with his classmates. When the three figures lead the chant, we will chant 만세 holding the 태극기.
그럼 세 분을
Please turn to the
영상으로
video.
만나보겠습니다.
폭력사를 함께 이겨낸 사랑스러운
We have overcome these
만세를 외치
hardships and agony, and I'm very proud of our country.
그날의 감격을 기억하며
Remembering the overwhelming feeling of that day, let us chant hooray.
3.1 운동의 함성을
The
되새기며
shout of the March 1st movement that we remember, and gearing toward the next century, let us chant 만세.
만세!
Hooray for the independence of the Republic of Korea. With this, we will now close the 103rd March 1st Independence Movement Day ceremony. The Republic of Korea will continue to lead forward. In the name of Daehan or Korea, we will advance towards the future.
시청해주신 국민 여러분,
Thank you very much for watching.
And that wraps up our special coverage of the March 1st Independence Movement Day ceremony. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with our regularly scheduled newscast at 12 p.m. Korea time.